Hello, my name is Paul Stranahan. I am the Stranahan half of the Stranahan Mirth duo. I play marimba. Tim Mirth plays guitar, and we have a new recording coming out called 5 Pieces for Marimba and Guitar.
If you've followed anything that Paul and I have done in the past, or anything that I've done in the past, there's a fair amount of variety, and mostly is centered around electric instruments. And that's just one side, actually, of what has been more like publicly available of what we've done. But many concerts have happened in the past 10-15 years or more where acoustic instruments were in play.
I played with Tim in many different bands, and we kind of keep working on new stuff and kind of keep hopefully evolving. Started off, I had a jazz trio where I was playing drums.
Paul had got a hold of me through a contact to potentially play with his trio, and it was mostly jazz and or kind of fusion-y stuff, but more or less jazz type stuff. But a lot of it was original music. And as Paul and I started to get to know each other, we realized that we liked more than just playing jazz or standards or things like that. We actually had a lot of interest in other things. Some of that was fusion, some of it was metal. Eventually found out that we both had a strong appreciation for Meshuggah.
At first, to kind of put like a heavy project together.
And so that led to creating the band Red Side Visible, which we've had multiple releases from, and then we had even taken that band to Europe and among other things. And a lot of that music was written, it was all written with horns in mind too, so it's basically like a heavy project with horns and multiple integral lines.
And some pretty difficult music, some kind of progressive rock, metal, jazz, kind of with the horn section, and it was pretty involved. And
you might think, well, what does this have to do with the marimba record? As that transpired, and as you might imagine, having a band with 7 or so people in it gets hard to manage when people move away or things change.
It was great while it lasted. It was hard to keep it going. So we eventually kind of, at some point, decided to not keep that going. We had another group that Tim and I were playing with. It was called PSI, called Paul Stranahan's Insomnia, and we did one recording, and Tim played guitar on that. Had saxophone and bass also, and I was playing drums. And then finally, that we decided to move on and do some duo stuff. We had a band called, and we still do, called Night Terrors.
But Night Terrors is a mix between really through composed stuff and improvisation, and it can go anywhere. It can be pretty and acousticy, and I might have like singing bowls and violin or something, and then or it can be extreme with crazy distortion, 7-string, wildness, and gongs and drums and just wailing and atonal stuff.
And we had a couple recordings with that. We've been incorporating some of the marimba with that for a few of the songs.
Through that, a lot of music's been sort of like composed and written and regrouped it.
I guess gradually we kind of wanted to do a recording where it's strictly playing marimba and acoustic guitar, kind of a pretty different instrumentation. And
at some point, Paul had been playing marimba much of this time, but he actually went and got this amazing custom marimba. It cost a couple lifetimes of money or whatever.
In 2019, I made the splurge and spent a little too much money, but hopefully it's worth it, on getting a custom-made marimba. This is a DeMoro marimba. A guy out of Arkansas, Doug DeMoro, makes marimbas, and it's a beautiful instrument. He came highly recommended. So I was on the waiting list for about 1.5 years for that.
It was really interesting. So he has this marvelous instrument. It took a couple years to get it. And that inspired, of course, like, hey, you're gonna spend this much money on something, you might as well use it for something, right? So it started to make its way into a lot of the Night Terrors shows. Sometime a little bit later, I had started moving more away from electric, like solid body guitars, and really became curious about archtop and acoustic guitars. So I actually went to this archtop festival in Colorado, the Rocky Mountain Archtop Festival, and it was like every great builder that we all dream about on the guitar side, but we never actually get to see any of that stuff in person. You know, it's just kind of like you wonder what it's like. There was one instrument in particular that really stuck out to me. It's great, and then you hold it, and then you take a closer look, and then you hear it, and it was the most marvelous instrument I've ever seen in the guitar world. And then I became acquainted. This was from Otto D'Ambrosio. He makes these guitars. I ended up getting one made. And it's been nothing short of amazing.
I do have another marimba that I've been practicing on for a long time. I actually inherited that from my aunt, Diane Jezik, and that's kind of how I originally got into marimba. And yeah, I've always kind of been interested in it, and I've been practicing it all these years, and forcing myself to buy this really nice custom-made instrument, it's kind of forcing myself to concentrate on something.
So when Paul and I started developing all this marimba guitar music, we finally decided to take it to the studio and record. I think initially I had considered using some other instruments and considered even doing more electric-y kind of stuff. But once I had this instrument, it just became obvious that it should be this. Some of that is because archtop guitar has a sort of connotation of being a jazz swing kind of instrument, and one of my hopes with some of the work that I've been doing with it is to just show that it's much more than that. It's not necessarily just jazz. It's a wonderful acoustic instrument. There's characteristics about it that don't show up in flat top guitars, and I kind of just want to continue to expand what is seen as not necessarily seen as normal, but what is sort of normalized with archtops. Yeah. So to the pieces.
So some of these tunes are kind of evolved out of some of the Red Side Visible, which you might not think if you're first hearing it for the first time. I didn't want to call it Night Terrors because, I don't know, somehow marimba and Night Terrors just doesn't quite go together. So we're sort of keeping with Night Terrors if there's some gong bashing and drums bashing, electric guitar distortion for that sort of thing. So this is, I don't know if I say it's mellow, but it's certainly not as heavy. But some of the tunes are pretty involved. In some ways we've taken the more intricate arrangements and have done them more on marimba and guitar.
What's interesting about this project is it's almost like a classical project with pieces that are composed by Paul and I. And there's some of these things have multiple pages, 10 pages or whatever, written music. But in the spirit of jazz and in the spirit of things like Night Terrors, we did leave quite an element of improvisation in there, more or less for me and not so much on the marimba. On the guitar, there's plenty of, effectively guitar solos within these marimba pieces, and it's really interesting to play against that sort of texture of marimba because the notes don't sustain quite like a piano or even a guitar. The notes kind of die upon impact a little bit. So that was an interesting challenge. And then, of course, we make music that doesn't necessarily fall in your typical harmony and rhythmic variations.
Different interests, so this has kind of been nice to kind of force myself to concentrate on marimba, and we did this really nice recording. Let's see, 2 songs were written by Tim. I wrote 3 of them.
I hope you enjoy the record. There's 2 just absolutely pinnacle, incredible instruments of the highest caliber on there. If nothing else, just to hear this world-class marimba and the greatest guitar I've ever encountered.
I should say, the album's called 5 Pieces for Marimba and Guitar. So I hope you enjoy it.
It's pretty cool, really.